Imagine the most complex machine you can, a Swiss watch perhaps, or a Formula One engine. Now imagine a machine that has to defy gravity itself, a machine that juggles 1,000 variables of physics, aerodynamics, and mechanical stress every single second just to stay in the air. This is a helicopter. It doesn't fly like a plane. A plane is an arrow, shot through the sky with brutal forward force. A helicopter is a ballerina, balanced on the very tip of a needle, performing an impossible dance with the wind. In the 1950s, mastering this dance was the exclusive domain of giants. In the United States, there was Igor Sikorsky, a Russian genius backed by the immense power of United Aircraft Corporation. In Europe, titans of industry poured millions into research and development. They had the best universities, the most advanced materials, the biggest factories, and armies of engineers. They had everything. And halfway around the world, in a dusty, forgotten town on the plains of Argentina, a young man had nothing. No university degree, no factory, no advanced materials, no team of engineers. He had a shed, he had scrap metal, and he had an obsession. While the giants spent fortunes trying to perfect their complex machines, this young man decided he would build his own, from scratch, with parts he salvaged from junk heaps and an engine he designed in his head. This is not a fable. This is the story of Augusto Ulderico Sicare, the mechanic who taught himself to build a helicopter, and in doing so, challenged the very foundations of the global aviation industry. To understand the miracle of what Sicare accomplished, you must first understand his world. The year is 1951. In the skies over Korea, the Bell 47 helicopter is proving its worth, evacuating wounded soldiers from the front lines. It is a revelation. Vertical flight is no longer a novelty, it is a strategic necessity. This realization sends a shockwave through the industrial world. Every major power knows it needs helicopters, and the race is on. But the barrier to entry is colossal. A helicopter's rotor system is a nightmare of engineering. To ascend, descend, fly forward, backward, and sideways, the pitch of each individual blade must be adjusted in real time as it spins. The device that makes this possible is called a swash plate. It is an intricate, brilliantly complex mechanism. It is also incredibly expensive to manufacture and brutally difficult to perfect. Sikorsky, Bell, Hiller, they all had their own versions, each one patented, protected, and the product of tens of thousands of man-hours. The cost to develop a single prototype ran into the millions of 1950s dollars. It was a club for billionaires and superpowers. Argentina was not in that club. It was a country of immense potential, but one wrestling with political instability and economic isolation. It was a nation of beef, grain, and tango, not advanced aviation. And in the small agricultural town of Saladillo, deep in the province of Buenos Aires, the world of high technology felt 1,000,000 miles away. This was the world into which Augusto Sicare was born in 1937. His family were Italian immigrants, hard-working people of the land. From them, he inherited a powerful work ethic. But from some unknown place, he was gifted with a spark of mechanical genius that bordered on the supernatural. He was different. While other boys his age were kicking a football, Augusto was disassembling the family farm equipment. Not to break it, but to understand it, to hear its secrets. School couldn't hold him, the rigid structure, the slow pace. It was a cage for a mind that moved at the speed of combustion. He dropped out at the age of 11. His formal education was over. His real education was just beginning. He got a job in his uncle's mechanics workshop. Here, surrounded by grease and metal, he found his university. Every engine was a textbook. Every broken transmission was a puzzle. He didn't just learn to fix things, he learned to improve them. By his early teens, he was designing and building his own machines. Go-karts powered by lawnmower engines. Motorcycles cobbled together from spare parts. Machines that were faster and more reliable than anything one could buy. Then, at 18, he achieved the impossible. He designed and built a complete four-stroke diesel engine from the ground up. With 600 cubic centimeters and 22 horsepower, he machined the cylinder block, the pistons, the crankshaft, everything. Himself. in a small rural workshop. This was not the work of a hobbyist. This was the work of a prodigy. But all of this was just a warm-up. One afternoon he found a magazine. On the cover was a picture of a helicopter. A Bell 47, most likely. He had seen planes before, but this was different. It didn't need a runway. It could hover, motionless, like a hummingbird. It could dance in the air. For most people, it was a curiosity. For Augusto Sicare, it was a revelation. His mind, already obsessed with the poetry of mechanics, had just found its ultimate expression. He was 21 years old. He had never seen a real helicopter in his life. He had never spoken to a pilot or an aeronautical engineer. He made a decision so audacious, so utterly insane, that no one could have taken it seriously. He was going to build one. He began. The first problem was the engine. No car engine was light enough. No motorcycle engine was powerful enough. So he built his own. Just as he had with the diesel engine, he designed a new two-stroke four-cylinder motor of 60 horsepower, specifically for his future aircraft. He calculated the power requirements based on pure intuition and books he could find on basic physics. He machined the parts himself. Then came the airframe. He had no access to lightweight aluminum alloys, so he used steel tubing, the kind you might find in a bicycle frame, which he welded together in his workshop. The cockpit was a simple seat, open to the elements. The controls were sticks and pedals he fabricated from raw metal stock. Everything was a challenge. Everything was an invention. But the true mountain was the rotor system, the heart of the helicopter. He had no access to a swash plate. He couldn't afford to import one, and the designs were secret anyway. So, he had to invent his own. You see, Sicare didn't think like a corporate engineer. He didn't have a team to delegate tasks to. He had to think with his hands. His mind worked through the feel of metal, the logic of levers and gears. He looked at the problem not from the top down, with complex theories, but from the bottom up, with mechanical simplicity. What if the controls didn't need to be so complicated? What if the forces could be managed more directly? Slowly, piece by piece, he designed and built his own control system. It was unorthodox. It was nothing like what the big American companies were doing. But he believed it would work. For 3 years, he labored in secret. His family thought he was obsessed. His neighbors thought he was crazy. The man building a flying machine in his shed became a local joke. He ignored them. He worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and an unshakable vision. The helicopter took shape, not from blueprints, but from the image he held in his mind. He called it the CH-1, Sicare Helicopter Number 1. By 1958, it was ready. A strange, skeletal contraption of steel tubes, wires, and a small handmade engine. It looked raw, primitive. It looked like it was built from trash. He rolled it out of the workshop. He didn't have a test pilot. He didn't have a safety protocol. He climbed into the seat himself. He started the engine he had built. It roared to life. The long wooden rotor blades he had carved and balanced by hand began to spin, slowly at first, then faster and faster. The machine shook violently. The noise was deafening. He pulled gently on the collective lever, and the CH-1, born of scrap and genius, lifted off the ground. Let me repeat that. In 1958, a 21-year-old self-taught mechanic, with no formal training, using salvaged parts in a rural Argentine town, successfully built and flew the first helicopter ever designed and constructed in South America. The first flights were just small hops tethered to the ground. But they were enough. It worked. The news spread like wildfire. The crazy mechanic from Saladillo was not so crazy after all. Journalists arrived. Then government officials. They saw the CH-1. They saw it fly. They couldn't believe their eyes. This was not just a curiosity. This was a national triumph. The Argentine Air Force immediately took notice. They brought Sicare and his CH-1 to Buenos Aires. They tested it. They studied it. They offered him a position and a scholarship to study aeronautical engineering at the State University. For the first time, Sicare had resources. He had a proper workshop. He had access to better materials. He immediately began work on his next machine, the CH-2. It was a more refined, two-seat version. He completed it in 1964, but it was during this period that his true genius revealed itself. He was still bothered by the complexity of the swash plate. He knew there had to be a better way. Working with the Air Force, he began to develop a completely new type of rotor hub. Imagine the standard helicopter control system as a complex puppet with dozens of strings, the push rods and linkages, all being managed by the swash plate. Sikare's idea was to get rid of the strings. His revolutionary design, later patented, used a system of internal levers and cams, all housed within the rotor hub itself. It was far simpler, with 40% fewer parts than a conventional system. Fewer parts meant it was lighter. Fewer parts meant it was cheaper to manufacture. Fewer parts meant it was easier to maintain and far more reliable. It was an act of pure, elegant engineering. A solution so simple and so brilliant that the global giants had completely missed it. He had solved the problem. He had created a path to affordable, reliable helicopters. He received Argentine patent number 146.494 for his Comando de Rotor de Helicóptero. He was unstoppable. He went on to create the CH-3, a light coaxial helicopter, at the request of the Army. He even returned to his first love, engines, and developed a way to convert a standard American V8 car engine, a Ford 221, to run vertically and power a helicopter. This was another revolutionary idea aimed at slashing costs. He was building a new aviation industry from the ground up, based on his principles of simplicity and ingenuity. It was an absolute triumph. He was a national hero. But Augusto Sikare didn't know that his real battle, the one he could not win, was just beginning. His fight was no longer against the laws of physics. It was against the laws of economics. Sikare's dream was not just to build helicopters. It was to build them in Argentina, for Argentina. He wanted to create a national industry, to provide jobs, to prove that his country could compete on the world stage. He established a small company, Sikare Aeronautica, in Saladillo. He had the patents. He had the prototypes. He had the genius. What he didn't have was a stable country. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Argentina was trapped in a devastating cycle of military coups, political instability, and economic chaos. Hyperinflation erased capital overnight. Currency devaluations made importing even the most basic components impossibly expensive. Government contracts and promises of support would appear with one administration, only to vanish with the next. There was no venture capital culture to fund a high-risk manufacturing enterprise. The banks wouldn't loan money for such an audacious project. Sikare had designed a cheap helicopter, but starting a factory to mass-produce it was anything but cheap. It required a level of investment and economic stability that simply did not exist. The world's aviation giants like Bell and Robinson in the United States were not just building helicopters. They were building them within a stable, massive, and supportive ecosystem. They had government support, a deep supply chain, and access to the world's largest market. Sikare was an island, a genius on an island, watching the tide of economic reality wash away his dreams of mass production. He received offers, of course, from the United States, from Europe. "Come work for us," they said. "We will give you everything you need. A blank check. You can realize your vision." He refused. He was loyal to his home. He believed in his country, even when it seemed his country was failing him. But before continuing, I want to ask you something. Think about this decision. Sikare had the chance to take his brilliant designs to a place where they would be immediately funded and mass-produced. He could have become a household name, a titan of industry like Sikorsky. But he chose to stay in Argentina, to fight an impossible battle out of patriotism and loyalty. Do you think this was bravery or a tragic mistake? Let me know what you believe in the comments below. I read them very carefully. And if you are finding this story of forgotten genius inspiring, please take a second to hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that stories like this matter, and it helps our channel bring more of them to light. Thank you. Now let's continue. Frustrated by the inability to launch his larger helicopters into production, Sikare pivoted. If he couldn't build a national industry, he would focus on what he could control. He noticed a problem. Learning to fly a helicopter was difficult and dangerous. The smallest mistake could be catastrophic. Training was expensive. So, in the late 1980s, he invented something entirely new. The Sikare SVH-3 helicopter flight simulator. This was not a computer simulation. This was a real helicopter, tethered to a mobile ground platform that allowed it to lift, turn, and move in any direction, but prevented it from getting out of control. A student could experience the true feeling of flying, the feedback of the controls, the roar of the engine, all in complete safety. It was revolutionary. It drastically cut the cost and risk of primary flight training. And this time, the world paid attention. The simulator, which was updated to the SVH-4, became a global success. Flight schools from Europe to Asia bought it. It was a product he could build in his small factory and export. He had found his niche. Building on this success, he returned to his first love, small, personal helicopters. He focused on the ultralight category, which had fewer regulatory hurdles. He created the CH-7, a single-seat ultralight helicopter kit. It was agile, powered by a reliable Rotax engine, and incorporated his famously simple and robust control systems. It was a masterpiece of minimalist design, and it too became a success. Enthusiasts around the world bought and built his kits. He finally had a viable company. Sikare Helicopteros S.A., founded with his sons, became a respected, if small, player in the world of light aviation. They never built the fleet of transport helicopters for the Argentine army. They never became the Sikorsky of the South. The grand national dream was never fully realized. But Augusto Sikare was much more than just an inventor. He was a teacher. His real legacy was not just in the machines he built, but in the inspiration he provided. He never lost his humility. He remained in Saladillo, his hometown. His workshop was always open to young people who, like him, had a passion for mechanics. He taught them not just how to weld or turn a lathe, but how to think, how to look at a problem and see a simple solution, how to trust their hands and their intuition. He demonstrated that genius is not the property of wealthy nations or powerful corporations. It can be born anywhere, in a dusty field, in a greasy workshop, in the mind of a boy who leaves school at 11. The system had failed him. The economic and political chaos of his country had prevented his greatest visions from taking flight on a grand scale. But he never failed himself. He never stopped creating. He never stopped dreaming. He continued to design and innovate for his entire life, creating more than a dozen unique aircraft, from ultralights to military drones, and even a flying car prototype. His life was a testament to the power of a single obsessed mind. Today, when you see a Sikare helicopter, whether it's a trainer in Japan or a kit being built by a hobbyist in France, you are not just looking at a machine. You are looking at a symbol. It's a reminder of a dream that was too big for its environment. A story of what could have been if his genius had been matched by national support and stability. Why does this story matter? It matters because it forces us to ask a difficult question. How many other Sikares are out there right now in forgotten towns and overlooked countries holding a revolutionary idea in their minds? How much human potential is squandered, not by a lack of talent, but by a lack of opportunity? Augusto Sikare proved the hard part wasn't inventing the helicopter. The hard part was building a world that would let him build it. His journey was not one of commercial failure, but of profound, enduring, and inspirational perseverance. He fought the battle on his own terms, and in the end, he created a legacy that will outlive any corporate balance sheet. He taught the world that the most powerful tool in engineering is not a supercomputer or $1 billion budget. It's a curious mind, a pair of skilled hands, and a spirit that refuses to be told what is impossible. Augusto Ulderico Sikare, 1937 to 2022, the man who built a helicopter from nothing and gave his dream to the world.